You are tuning in to the 82nd episode of the Audible Weed Walk. This is Nina welcoming you. You know, the 5th of May, until very recently, only meant Cinco de Mayo for me, a day to celebrate the Mexican-American culture. Later, I got to know that it also celebrates the Spaniard-Mexican victory over the French at the Battle of Puebla. Part of our shared colonial history, right? Only recently I got to know that 5th May marks the Indian Survival Day in Guyana, known as the Arrival Day by the government. When African slavery ended in 1834, the British colonizers wasted no time in searching for new labor force to exploit. The British Guyana Indian indentureship began in 1838 with the Gladstone experiment by John Gladstone, a plantation owner. These plantations were dealing with mass labor shortage after the African brought as slaves started fleeing. He wrote to Glanders Arbuthnot and Company, a Calcutta-based recruitment firm, who had already sent laborers from India to Mauritius. With the exception of a brief halt, bound coolies, as they were known, were transported between 1838 to 1917. Nearly 240,000 were transported to Guyana alone. While most were from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, departing from Calcutta port, a significant minority also came from the Madras port in South India. Now, these names are actually very close to me. Glanders Arbuthnot and Company is a large multinational, actually British based company which still exists in Calcutta. Its headquarters is in Calcutta, and it owned pretty much tea gardens, then the Darjeeling little train stations, the what we know as LIC today, life insurance. It used to be there's copper mining, all kinds of things. And to top it all, my own father worked for that company. Such a skeleton in the closet, right? Never got to know. Then I read that May 6th also marks the Indian Survival Day in Martinique, as 314 indentured labor landed in Saint Pierre in 1854 on this day, which is in the Louis Napoleon ship. As the name suggests, this of the ship itself, this was courtesy to the French colonizers. Actually, at that time, it was the French East India Company. Where did they come from? The French East India Company recruited most of their laborers from their French-speaking part of the subcontinent, Pondicherry and Chandanagar in West Bengal. Remember Chandanagar, where Sri Aurobindo had taken refuge before coming to Pondi? There. It doesn't end there, of course. The Blundell Hunter brought the first Indian indentured labor to Jamaica on May 10th, 1845. The 228 adults, 33 children went to the parishes of Clarendon, St. Andrews, St. Mary, and Westmoreland. Between 1845 and 1916, over 36,000 people came. You must have heard the word Girmitiyas, as it was known in Fiji. Amitav Ghosh's very well-researched novel, Sea of Poppies, gives a wonderful account. If you haven't read, I highly recommend. The word Girmitiyas is an adulterated form of agreement. In some places, agreement was that the laborers who came to the islands, or in most of the cases, these are islands, worked for 10 years, but the labor contracted lasted only for 5 years. So the remaining 5 years, they had to work for free as bonded labor. It's an intriguing, sad, at the same time, a tale of triumph of life that connects us here, our backyard, or our plates and palate, to those in Africa, in Fiji, and in the Carrebbeans. May seem to be a very special month. Did you know that that every year African Union celebrates 25th of May as the Africa Day. Each year there is a theme for the celebration, and this year happens to be the year of nutrition. Strengthening resilience in nutrition and food security on the African continent, strengthening agro-food system, health, social protection system for the acceleration of human, social, economic capital development. But can we really celebrate health and nutrition without the wonderful wild weedy greens? What's growing around, I thought, locally and weedy, which we can eat, nourish ourselves with, and also remember at the same time the African and the Indian endangered laborers whose stories are integrally related to us, our agriculture and food culture. There are several we can name that came from those continents: turkey berry or sundakai, mudakatan kide or balloon vine, karsilankannai or bringaraj from the South Americas, Mantakali, Pulichikere or the Rosella. Mantakali, as you know, is the Solanum nigrum or Macoy. Mukaratikire or Punarnabha, Musumusukai, Madras pea pumpkin came from Africa, and there are more. Some of these are little unknown where they are from. There are a whole lot of bunch. They are little unknown whether they came from Africa or South America or simultaneously came from both places. I thought let's celebrate May in honor of our African diaspora in the Carrebbeans and our close link to Africa, and make a meal out of local and weedy plants that links us to our common history. Looking around, the first thing that comes to mind was tapioca or manihot esculenta. Oh, it is known by so many names: manihot, cassava, tapioca. In Tamil, it's called maravalli kiranga. In Sanskrit, tarukanda. It seems the word tapioca derived from the word tipioca. It's a name in the Tupi language, which was spoken by the natives in the part of Brazil when Portuguese first arrived in the northeastern region around 1500s. And in Tupi, the word in the Tupi language, the word means sediment or coagulant, referring to the starchy sediment character of the tapioca extraction. Extracts of the tapioca, how we know it. The boiled, it becomes very starchy. Tapioca roots are available and popular in South India, where I first ate it. But in the rest of India, tapioca only refers to these processed globules. Locally in Tamil, it's called javirisi, which is primarily a carbohydrate with no other nutrients or fiber in it. But tapioca roots that we find around here, and this is the season, have 12% carbohydrate, little protein, some dietary fiber, potassium, calcium, iron, magnesium, vitamin B6 and vitamin C. At a glance, definitely a healthier version, but it has to be cooked well and cooked right to get the anti-nutrients and enhance the nutrients. How does tapioca link us? Wild population of the plant and early ancestors of today's plant was growing in the west central Brazil, where it was first domesticated some 10,000 years BP. If you are not familiar with the word BP, it means before present. Forms of the modern domesticated species can also be found growing in the wild in the south of Brazil some 4600 BC. Cassava pollens show up in the Gulf of Mexico, Mexican lowlands in the San Andrean archaeological site, sometimes around 4600 BC. The local direct evidence of cassava cultivation comes from about 1400 years old Mayan site in El Salvador. Even though both Spanish and Portuguese colonizers were apprehensive of both cassava and the corn, their cultivation popularity as food continued. Cassava was introduced to Africa by the Portuguese traders from Brazil in the 16th century, and it is immensely popular, especially in West Africa. So here is how you can make an West African fufu or starch for your food. Take 6-inch or more of tapioca root. It is if it's narrow, then get a little more. Boil it with a little salt. Don't boil it too much. Don't make it a mush. A little less. Once boiled, let it set aside and cool. Peel and cube. Now, ideally, you take a wooden mortar and pestle and mash the cube one by one. Then continue pounding. Some of the hard fibers will come out and discard them. Then continue pounding as though you're making a dough. It will become smooth and sort of shiny, like in a single mass. Make it like a bread dough rounded up. You can actually portion at this stage and make smaller rounds and set it aside. Your fufu is ready. I took a walk outside with the kids of Tamarai yesterday. Tamarai is a wonderful Orville outreach school, and they were having some special programs for the summer camp. There around Tamarai, looking for the edible weeds, and also in my backyard, I have noticed wild jute leaves growing as weeds. They are called kattu tutti in Tamil. Molokia is a more common name, also known as Tiliaceae plant. This name I really like because it comes from the family Tiliaceae. I know it is also called Ewidu in, or I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, Ewidu in West Africa. It has so many names: East Indian mallow, West African mallow. It's called chonch in Hindi, chunchu in Sanskrit, titpat or patpata in Bengali. It is also grown as food or garden plant in some places. It is exactly unknown, rather disputed, where the plant originated from, Africa or Indo-Burmese region in Asia. Since there are more wild species and greater genetic diversity found in Africa, likely the primary center of origin is in Africa and secondary center is in Indo-Burmese region. It is found growing on its own as weedy growth in almost all continents, and in most of them they are also cultivated for various reasons as food and, of course, for the fibers. Until very recently, jute was one of India's major commercial crops known for its natural fibers. This weedy jute green and also the cultivated varieties have all of the nutrients needed that we are seeking in food, almost all. It is rich in carotenoids, vitamin A, C, B, K, folic acid, calcium, potassium, iron, and dietary fiber. It is also rich in both essential and non-essential amino acids, including lysine. Remember lysine? In my last podcast, I had mentioned lysine as conventionally dietitian thinks that lysine is especially difficult to get from plant sources. But here we go. We have our wild jute plants to provide that. Once cooked, it becomes slimy. And you know, if you have come for my weed walk, you know what the slimy food is good for, right? Most often than not, they are good for gut health and help maintain good digestion. Jute leaves are also anti-inflammatory and are good for addressing pneumonia. How do you cook them? Well, I did some weed hunting and found around only 2 cups. So I took 2 cups, washed and steamed them and set it aside. I added 2 cups of edible amaranth. You can add any variety. I used the Thandakire or Amaranthus tricolor. In Bengali, it is called Katuar data, but I did not use the stem. Keeping it for some other time, I use the leaves only. You can actually use any of the Amaranthus or even Punnangani, which is also Amaranth family, but it is Alternanthera sessilis. This plant is now in season and growing around you, both amaranth and the jute plant. Amaranth is also highly nutritious, and if you cannot find the jute plant, you can prepare this with amaranth only. It would be less slimy. Amaranth too originates, by the way, from South America. Leaves once washed and steamed, not boiled to retain the nutrients, can simply be heated and mixed with some umami. For that, you can add fermented fish as condiment or some dried Chinese mushroom, some spices of your choice to top up, some garam masala, salt to taste, and a simple version in a thick soupy consistency is ready to eat with fufu. This is how I have eaten it in Africa. Of course, the spices differ slightly. The Caribbean version is a little more involved. It adds, you take a little oil and add some chopped onion, garlic, tomatoes, ginger, or you can have a tomato broth separately, actually. Then you make the tomato separately in a little broth, and you add onion, ginger, and saute it in a little oil, add green chilies, and then add the greens, and rest is similar to the African version. You can pre-cook some meat or prawns and add as well. Serve sometimes with this tomato broth, along with the tomato broth, or without, along with the fufu. It's a complete healthy meal. And you can probably add a drink of rosella, which also comes from Africa. Don't forget to add a little bit of ginger and a pinch of cinnamon. It's just awesome. A complete and total meal, along with complete with a drink, something that ties us to our continent and to the other continents and the island. So with that, I will end today. If you try it, let me know how it goes. I'll see you next week. Stay well and stay safe.